Hi everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to draw a cat eye in pastels. Now the first thing that I like to do is use a black Carbothello pencil and map in the outside shape of the eye. So this is the darker part of the eyelid, and this is going to enable me to get that accurate right from the very beginning. I'm not focusing on the pupil or the iris colour, my main aim is to get the shape and size of that eye in place. Now the reason this is where I start is because the shape and size of the eye is going to affect the expression of that animal. So if we make the eyes too big or they're not quite the right shape, it of course is not going to resemble that pet as closely as it should. Now once I'm happy with the outside shape of the eye, that's when I start to draw the pupil. Now depending on the lighting, you're going to potentially have a narrow pupil like this cat does here, or you might have a little bit more of a wider, rounder pupil. But the pupils of cats are very different to dogs, so you do want to be making sure that you've got the shape of that right. Now, if there is a particularly bright highlight in the eye, it doesn't matter the animal that I'm drawing, I will usually take my white Carbothello pencil and map in the highlight first, which is what I've done here. Just the brightest little dot, and then I can put those subtle highlights at the top later on. Now the next step is I like to map in the iris colour. Now I'm not worried about the exact colour here, you're going to see many pencils that I'm going to be using where I'm gradually adjusting the colour, but I am focusing on my lights and my darks. So I've started off with a little bit of a mid-tone, and then I've lightened that up here with a little bit more of a warmer, lighter green, and then I'm coming in and building up that slightly browner colour around the pupil. Now I like to be fairly accurate with the colours that I'm using in the initial stages, but not in terms of making sure that they are the exact colour. But what I'm trying to do here is put whether or not there is a bit of a browner green or a bluish green or maybe a yellow green, whatever it might be, but that I've hinted at that base layer stage, because that then makes it easier for me to follow my reference photo. It's just like when I draw fur on animals, I will always map in my main lights and darks first, and I've got many tutorials here on YouTube that show that, and this process here is exactly the same. I can't stress enough that it's not the exact colour that I'm working on here. That will come as we build up our layers. Now with this dark brown Carbothello pencil, what I'm doing here is starting to shade the outside of the iris. This is a very important stage. This is what's going to start to build up that three-dimensional sphere shape of the eye. This is one of those areas where you really want to pay very close attention to that reference photo. If there is any subtle shadow, we do want to be capturing that, because that's going to really help with the level of realism that this portrait will have when finished. Now usually the darkest shadow is going to be at the top of the eye, because that's where the top eyelid and the fur that just sits above it is cast in a shadow. So here I'm using my darkest pencil to reinforce that, and this is where the importance of contrast and values come into play. So when I start to reinforce my darkest shades, I'm really starting to build up more of that three-dimensional look. I speak about the importance of contrast in every single one of my tutorials because it is so important. I don't have to worry about the exact colour here, although the colour is important. If I don't have the right light or dark shade of that colour, that's going to impact that realism in the end rather than the exact colour. Now a prime example of this is you can have 5 or 6 different photographs of that one animal, and the eye colour or the fur colour is going to be slightly different in all of them depending on the light source. If it's taken on a sunny day, whether or not there's a shadow across the face, whatever it may be, that's going to affect the colours that we use. But the values, how light or how dark that is what's going to help to still make that look realistic. Now I've got a really nice foundation in here, and you'll notice that everything looks quite soft. This is what I like to do and get this level of softness at this stage. This is perfect for then building up our details. So as I start to just add a little bit of blue here to soften that top highlight, I'm really starting to now build up even more detail. Now one of the common mistakes is when we work with our base layer, whether or not we've used our pencils or we've used pan pastels, we then jump straight into the fine details. And this is something that I focus all of my Patreon tutorials on, because they're in real time with a voiceover while I'm drawing. No process is skipped over or rushed through. Now the importance of the layering process, this is one of the things that's going to massively affect how much of a photorealistic finish we're going to get. Jumping into those details straight on top of a pan pastel base layer is going to create far more of a flatter appearance than if we build up our layers gradually like this. Now even here with that brown pencil, I was softening the lighter green that I've just added. So I don't want to be just focusing on fine details and leaving it as that. If there is a soft transition from one to the next, then I want to be making sure that I've captured that before I then again add another layer of finer detail. Now the softening techniques that I use, you can see I'm not using any blending stumps, sponges or my finger. I'm doing this all with the pencils. Now this blending and softening technique works really well for so many different situations because it doesn't allow us to overblend. And this is a problem that can occur when using pastels because they blend so beautifully. They're wonderful for backgrounds in that first layer, creating that softness if we need any out of focus elements. But when we're working on something like this, we don't want to overblend because I still want all of those layers here that I've built up to show through. Now the other thing as well is this eye is fairly small. If you look at this in relation to the size of the pencil, although I've zoomed in for this video, there is a lot of light and dark changes that I've captured here because I've made sure to work in multiple layers. And this is so important. If you do then have any fine details to add like little patterns in the eye, then it's at this stage now where you can go ahead and add them. So I really do hope the few tips that I've shared in this video have been useful. If they were, I would really appreciate it if you could give it a like and a thumbs up because it makes a huge difference to my channel. I upload a couple of videos to YouTube every week, so if you would like to get notified of that content, then don't forget to hit the subscribe and the bell button. If you do have any art related questions, feel free to pop them in the comments because I'm more than happy to help if I can. And if you would like to draw along to the real-time version of this cat, then that is available on my Patreon now. I'll pop all of that in the description as well. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be uploading another video at the end of the week.